decided to use the mic. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I can hear it very loud actually. Good morning. Hello again. Hope the tour yesterday was interesting. I'm now going to give an introduction to the Crossrail project. So that's going to be basically the background for the rest of the items over the rest of the day. This is basically the standard presentation that we give to any delegation that comes to Crossrail to understand about the project, which is something that we have to do quite a lot. We get international delegations to come and find out about the scheme, and we've honed it down, and hopefully I can get this done in 20 minutes and give you plenty of time for questions at the end. Crossrail is a high-capacity metro railway. The map that you see here, the red section in the centre is a new tunnel. The blue lines to the east and the west are existing railway. So the concept behind Crossrail is to take services which run on those existing lines, come to termini at the edge of London, which is something we talked about yesterday, and then turn around and go back empty, to link them through the centre of London so that people's journeys can continue into central London, so that they don't have to change onto the underground at the point at which they arrive at the terminus station, and that train can provide service even out towards the other side of London. Red on that diagram is tunnel. There are bits of red that are existing tunnels, particularly the line down to Heathrow Airport over there in the west. But the central section, which is the inset there, with the 9 stations below ground and 1 surface station, that's where the bulk of the money that Crossrail is costing is being spent. Building those 2 new single-track tunnels and those 10 stations. The funding envelope for the project is 14.8 billion, and that I'll talk a little bit later about how that breaks down, where it comes from. The project as a whole has a benefit cost ratio of above 2, which is why we were able to go ahead. We're predicting 42 billion of benefits over the discounted period for the project, which for railway projects is 60 years. And once open, Crossrail will enable 200 million journeys per year, which is about a 10% increase on the capacity of the rail network in central London. The history, I'll talk in a bit more detail about when I do my session later in the afternoon about stakeholder management on the project. But Crossrail has had a very long gestation. It originated on the line that we have now, the route that we have now, in 1989 with a thing called the Central London Rail Study. It had actually been thought up even well before that in 1974 in a thing called the London Rail Study, but at that point it didn't go any further. In 1989, it got as far as putting a bill in Parliament, but that bill didn't make it through the parliamentary process. As I think I explained yesterday, the economy dropped. The need for the project was then, those who were opposed to the project were able to make the case in Parliament that it wouldn't be necessary, everybody would be teleworking, there'd be no need for building anything like Crossrail. That turned out to be extremely wrong. In 2000, the Strategic Rail Authority carried out another piece of work called the London East-West Study, and that recommended that Crossrail should perhaps have been done all along. So a company was established, Cross London Rail Links. We went through the business case for the project, produced a business case which went to the Treasury to see whether they could fund it. We had to go around that process twice because the Treasury takes a lot of convincing. And then in 2004, an independent review was called into what we did, because basically everything we said was that the project actually had to happen. The Treasury just wanted an independent view on that. The Montague Review gave them that, which led to the agreement that we could put a bill in Parliament, which we did in February 2005. So we're authorising the project, giving the powers to construct the project through a hybrid bill. It took from February 2005 to July 2008 to get that royal assent to that bill and achieve the Crossrail Act. That enables us then getting into starting construction, but of course the authorisation process, the powers process, is only half of the story. The other story is how do you get the actual money, how You can't start work if you haven't got a budget and funding in place. So that's something else I'll talk about in a minute. That enabled construction to start in January 2009, and we are now 72% complete. So this is why Crossrail. This is a map of the underground network using a thing called Rail Plan, which is London Underground and Transport for London's transport planning modelling software. This shows the links on the network which will be relieved, and in some cases made worse, by Crossrail. There's only one area where it gets worse, which is a little bit down from King's Cross. Everywhere else it has a beneficial impact on the network, particularly east-west, and in some cases over 30% reduction in crowding on trains, for example on the Central Line there, and also on the Jubilee Line via Canary Wharf, because the Crossrail service obviously provides different journey opportunities for people who are on those services. Without a project like Crossrail, the Underground is going to become just far too full and not to be able to serve London. So, how do we actually fund the project? The project's funding envelope of 14.8 billion is roughly divided into the London contribution and the UK contribution. The UK contribution comes largely from the Department for Transport, which is funding the project to the tune of 4.8 billion over the life of the project. So each year, that's not a huge amount out of their budget. The Department for Transport has got some private funding, sort of contributions to what it will be putting in, some from the City of London, which was mentioned yesterday, also Heathrow Airport Limited putting in a few hundred million. And then all the work on the existing railway network, the blue bits of that map, is being done by Network Rail, and that's 2.3 billion. That's basically electrification of the lines to the west. It's station rebuildings, in some cases very significant station remodelling. At Abbey Wood, for example, building an entirely new station. And all of that work is done in the same way that Network Rail would do any work. That's what the cost of it gets added to Network Rail's asset base, and it gets the track access charges to pay back the cost of our investment. So when people are using Crossrail, part of that fare is going to go to funding that 2.3 billion. Another part of that fare will go to funding a rolling stock, and a rolling stock isn't part of the 14.8 billion, and the rest of it will go into the general TfL pot, because TfL will be operating Crossrail. The other part is the London input into the funding. Transport for London has some direct funding, a couple of billion, but the major and probably the most interesting thing, which is a new thing for the UK, is what we call the business rate supplement. So, alongside the Crossrail Act going through Parliament, another Act of Parliament was going through to give the Mayor of London the power to raise a business levy. So businesses would have to pay an additional tax, and that tax can then be used to finance transport improvements. Giving the Mayor that power was one of the key planks to getting Crossrail funding. So all businesses in London with a rateable value above £52,000, which means that it affects big businesses, but not corner shops or small one-man band type businesses. They're paying an extra just under 2% on their business rates. That's going direct to the Mayor. The Mayor can then borrow against that 2% levy as an income stream, and that has provided 4.1 billion to the funding of Crossrail. And that levy can go on as long as it needs to pay back that cost. And originally it was planned to go, I believe, to 2033. It's now, because the economy has done better than we planned, it could be finished before that. The next question will be, will we ever stop having it? Because actually there are other projects which need to be built, and possibly we'll roll that funding over into funding Crossrail too. As well as that, there are small amounts of funding which come from development. The majority of the biggest of those is the developments actually that Crossrail will have a stake in above stations. So about 500 million is going to be coming from the Transport for London having an interest in the development of buildings above stations. And then there are also contributions from Section 106 and from the Community Infrastructure Levy, which local authorities charge onto developments either on or around the stations. and that brings another few hundred million in. So you can see we've got funding coming from a lot of different places. When the total is as big as this, you're not going to be able to get one person to sign up to fund the project. It's a patchwork, and there's a serious amount of negotiation required to put together a funding package. That took on Crossrail basically right until 2007 to come up with the idea of how we could fund this, and then from October 2007 through to December 2008 to get the actual detail of it finalised and get those agreements signed. This is how the project is governed, how the project is organised. Because we have this funding coming partly from central government and partly from London government, we have two sponsors. We have the Department of Transport and Transport for London. Now, where you've got two sponsors, there's obviously opportunity for quite a lot of difficulty and negotiation between the two. So in order to make sure that Crossrail wasn't going to be too constrained by that, the sponsors' agreements between the two organisations and with Crossrail are all set up so that there is a board of the sponsors which makes the decisions that it needs to, and then Crossrail can get on with doing the work relatively freely. So those agreements will happen at a higher level. There's an agreement between the DfT and Transport for London. There's they have an organisation called the JST, the Joint Sponsor Team, and that's individuals from those organisations that have a board. And then they are basically checking the operation of a thing called the Project Development Agreement, which is Crossrail's rules, Crossrail's the menu of what they want from Crossrail. Below this, in this green area here, that is the Crossrail project, but even that involves a lot of different organisations. So we have partners, a delivery partner and program partner, organisations that have the right skills to deliver a major project that have been brought into Crossrail, because we couldn't start from scratch and recruit people up and train them up. We needed to go to people who had already done major projects. So those two big contracts were let. We then integrated them into the Crossrail team, but below that, of course, we have our contractors. So we have design consultants and construction contractors, and they're all managed by our project management team, which come from our delivery partner. And as well as those building Crossrail for Crossrail, there is a lot of interfaces with other railways and other organisations. For example, the utility companies, the two organisations that are developing stations themselves, that's Canary Wharf Group developing the Canary Wharf station, and Barclay Homes developing the Woolwich station. Network Rails works, which are being delivered for Crossrail, and of course London Underground. The Crossrail Act includes some powers for works to London Underground stations that are being delivered by London Underground separately and outside that 14.8 billion. But because of the numbers of passengers which will be using both Bond Street and Tottenham Court Road station, London Underground asked for powers in the Act for station upgrades at those two stations as well. And then there is the concept of the operating railway. We will be handing the project over. Crossrail as an organisation will be packed up in 2019 and will be finished. But in terms of operation, Transport for London will be operating the railway, and therefore we need that operational expertise in Crossrail so that we know we're delivering a railway that is operable. So there is a Crossrail team, Crossrail operational team within Crossrail Limited, and they're working with the train operating company who are already running trains from Shenfield into Liverpool Street, and that's Hong Kong MTR, the concessionaire, and the organisation building the rolling stock, which is Bombardier in Derby, and the rolling stock company are also building our depot for maintaining trains, which is in Holborn Common. So you can see there, that's a very complex group of relationships and a large number of organisations that are involved in delivering the Crossrail. At the moment, we're actually at 72%, this is another slide. We have finished the tunnelling. We're in the middle of station construction, but that station construction, heavy work has been done. We're now into fitting that out. We are halfway through the rail work. We're halfway through the depot work. The next big milestone is when we start to introduce the new trains, which will be starting in May 2017. This is how the tunnelling worked. We had 8 tunnel boring machines, each of the different colours is one TBM, and the major part of the tunnelling, the central London tunnel, we were at Farringdon yesterday and I talked about where the TBMs met underneath Lindsay Street. We've got the 2 tunnel boring machines, Avon and Phyllis, came from Paddington through to Farringdon, and Elizabeth and Victoria from a place called Limo Peninsula, which is next to the River Lee, through to Farringdon. Those were good places to launch TBMs because the excavated material obviously comes out the back of a tunnel bore machine, and that's where we were at Paddington, which is a place called Paddington New Yard. It's a rail served. We could load that excavated material, which is nice, good quality clay, easy stuff to dig in and easy stuff to use. Load that onto trains to get it away. At Limo Peninsula, we're next to the River Lee, we could load that excavated material onto barges, so we were minimising the numbers of lorries that we used for moving the excavated material. However, we had to build the stations first, and on the station site you've got to start from the top and dig down. So there were lorries arising from the station development. So of course Crossrail stations are quite large, and so there's quite a lot of that to happen as well. There are 2 TBMs which dug our tunnel under the River Thames, and another 2 which started near the Olympic Park in Stratford. They came through to where our junction is at Stepney Green. So in the central section of the route, which I probably should have covered on the first slide, Crossrail will be running 24 trains per hour in the central section. Those trains divide at Stepney Green. There's 2 branches in the east, and 12 trains per hour will run onto the Network Rail network up to Sheffield, and 12 of them will run to our station at Abbey Wood. In the west, actually, 14 of our trains are going to turn around at Paddington. We haven't got a second route to the west. That's something for the future. I suspect a project will be found to find something for those trains to go. When we were doing the development of the project, none of the options made financial sense because they cost too much to get those trains somewhere where they could provide a service. So what we have is 10 trains which run out onto the Great Western Main Line. 4 of those will run to Heathrow and provide a service to the airport, which is a very key benefit of the project, and the others will go to either West Drayton, Maidenhead or Reading and turn back. So underneath here we have a few pictures of the tunnelling going on, and probably this one, the second one's one of the most interesting. So you can see the size of that cavern. That is Stepney Green, that's where our tunnels divide. So we obviously needed to build a tunnel which was big enough to fit 2 Crossrail tunnels in. So that is the largest spray concrete lined cavern that's ever been built in Europe. We were at Liverpool Street, and I know that you may have seen some of this before, but I think this is useful to now orient yourself with this. This is a slide which I like to use, which shows the build-up of the infrastructure at one of the Crossrail stations. I talked yesterday about how the Liverpool Street station has 2 entrances, and those entrances span 2 underground stations. This slide explains that in a little bit more detail, and particularly gives you an idea of the size of the infrastructure below ground. So, what we have at the moment is 2 existing stations, Liverpool Street and Moorgate. This is the side of the railway that I talked about that runs between the 2, the Circle Line. The Central Line serves Liverpool Street, and the Northern Line serves Moorgate. There's also another line coming into Moorgate, which is National Railway, which sits above the Northern Line. And then through the middle of it is the Post Office Railway, which is a bit in our way, and that shows the size of the Crossrail infrastructure compared to what was there before. So we're talking, this is a 21st century railway, national railway sized trains with overhead line electrification, much bigger tunnels, much bigger platform tunnels, much bigger spaces below ground. So a Crossrail platform should look something like this, with a full height platform edge screen. Platform edge doors were used on the Jubilee line extension, that's going to be placed on the network they exist at the moment, but these don't go full height, they only go up to just above the door height. So there's no separation of the air spaces between the operational railway and the passenger space. Crossrail are having them go full height, which means we can treat those 2 areas as separate in terms of ventilation. And it also means that we can have the lighting on the platform edge screen, we can have addressable screens on the platform edge screen, so these will be LCD screens for information about the journey that you'll be taking. And because we've built spray concrete lined platform tunnels, and we can really see that the adit, the passageway that leads onto the platform, is kind of curves around. It's different to the way that an underground platform will use. So, first of all, it's nearly double the width, and it's certainly double the length of a typical London Underground platform. And the London Underground platform is usually made of cast iron tunnel segments, so it has a hard, sharp junction between an adit and a platform. Ours, because we're spray concrete lined, they're a much more gentle space, so there's more usable space even on the platform. This is Canary Wharf Station, so this station is almost finished because it was built by Canary Wharf Group and they wanted to then build their own site development above. This is what Bond Street. That's as how our platform is looking at the moment. We're currently building the actual platform structures within our platform tunnels. As well as that, we are laying the track. This is probably the Thames Tunnel. You can see we've got cast iron ring segments there. We're at the moment going through there, laying the final track, and then drilling the holes into the side of the tunnel so that we can hang the communications cables and the power cables, etc. That's where we are in construction. Network Rail. This kind of shows all the things that Network Rail are doing, such as providing new station buildings, extending platforms, providing accessibility lifts at stations which don't happen at the moment, and realigning tracks, putting up electrification and re-signalling. That works about halfway through at the moment. And then here are the new trains. There is no should know this, but this is somewhat of a departure for a national railway train. It has 3 doors per side per carriage, which is normally a train would have 2. There's a very good railway reason for that. But because our platforms will all be dead straight, that's less than the throws are less of an issue, and we need that large number of doors to get the numbers of people on and off the trains. So we're talking here about a train every 2.5 minutes when we open. We need to have an upgrade path for project for Crossrail so that more trains can run in the future. We could be, in the end, be having a dwell time of well under a minute to get everybody off and on the train. So we need wide doors, we need large numbers of doors, we need small, we need not too cramped a layout inside the train. So these trains, this is the first car, which was built at Derby earlier this year, and we are now bombarding going great guns to build us a fleet. And in May 2017, we'll start running those trains. The carriages will be walk through. So if you've been on the subsurface railway recently on the underground circle line, you'll see that there's you can walk all the way through the length of the train, same as you can on London Overground. Each train will have 1,500 capacity, and they'll be air conditioned, which is a bit of a departure for trains which go below ground in central London. And they will also have Wi-Fi, 4G, and all the 21st century accoutrements that you expect from people now expect. So, in order to not stress the network, we'll be opening Crossrail in phases. The first phase, well, let's say the first phase is what we call phase 0. That's what we are at the moment. That's Transport for London running the existing trains from Liverpool Street to Sheffield. In May 2017, that's phase 1, new trains, but still running the existing type of service on the route which has been used between Liverpool Street and Sheffield. Now, in May 2019, in December 2018, we opened the central section. We actually opened the tunnel through central London, and trains will run from Abbey Wood through to Paddington. But they won't go any further than that. So at that point, in May 2018, when people first used the network, the new tunnel, there'll be 3 different railways operating. There'll be new trains running from Sheffield into Liverpool Street, there'll be trains running from Abbey Wood to Paddington, and there'll be trains running from Heathrow to Paddington, but all separate. We want to get that central section tunnel operating operating really, really well before we connect them all together, which will happen in May 2019. As well as the benefits to the project that I talked about at the beginning, the 42 billion, we're expecting a significant amount of benefits which are not represented in the normal analysis, including 5.5 billion of property value which will arise because of Crossrail, because the additional journey opportunities for people around those sites. So this shows that we aren't necessarily appraising projects in the best way. There is a lot of benefit to a project that the normal Treasury rules don't allow us to take into account. I won't be talking about the site developments. In terms of delivering the project, I talked about the companies that we've got involved. We obviously needed a workforce, and we knew right from the start that Britain hadn't built that many projects like this for some years. So the first thing we did really was build the Tunnelling and Underground Construction Academy at Redbridge. So we have put something like 12,000 people through courses of varying lengths here, giving them the skills necessary to work on a large tunneling project. And this will live beyond Crossrail. It's going to be transferred to Transport for London. They will use it for training people for Crossrail 2, for the other projects they've got going on at the moment, like the Northern Line extension to Battersea, and also for other schemes by other organisations like the Thames Tideway Sewer Tunnel. So that enables, is a legacy of the project in terms of developing the skills in the UK. We've had to obviously demonstrate to the UK as a whole that while we're spending 14.8 billion in London, there is a benefit across the whole country from that. So 95% of the contracts that we have let have gone to UK companies rather than international companies, and 61% of those suppliers are outside London, and this shows how they're all spread out across the UK. I talked about the excavated material coming out of the ground at Paddington and Limo. We found a very useful reuse for that. That excavated material has been loaded onto ships and it's been taken to a place called Wallasey Island in Essex. At the moment, it looks something like this. It's a bit of reclaimed farmland. It's been bought by the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and the idea is to re-flood it so that it provides marsh habitat, which is something which has been being cut down for birds recently. But if you want to flood it, if you were to flood it as in the sand at the moment, it would just become a lake. So what with the Crossrail excavated material is going to build up these bunds so that people can walk along them and that the general ground level is raised, so it is a proper marshland habitat. As well as that really good beneficial environmental story, 19% of our excavated material beneficially reused. 86% of construction equipment is fitted with emissions control. We are very keen on ensuring that our sustainability of the project is as good as it can be, and we publish a sustainability report every year which has some key facts about that and what we've been doing. So this is what I am now doing, the Crossrail Learning Legacy, taking all of the work which has been done on Crossrail and sharing it for future schemes. We're using our supply chain and our Crossrail people to write up things which we feel are going to be of benefit to the future projects. We've recently launched the Learning Legacy website, which is learninglegacy.crossrail.co.uk. You can go there, find out, read up on key bits of work that Crossrail has done, and then we're using the people that are the authors of that, we're promoting those people as our legacy ambassadors, so that through our partner organisations, all the professional institutions, etc., when they have events, like this event here in fact, want to promote those ambassadors and people to pass on the knowledge that we've developed from Crossrail. And so 2 months ago, it was announced by TfL that when Crossrail opens, it will be called the Elizabeth Line in honour of the Queen. So we had the Queen on one of our sites, and she seems pretty pleased about it. And this shows you how Crossrail fits into the network.
So that was some great background information of a broad brush, really, of all the information that Crossrail are gathering and